Hi folks, Toad here with Visordown.com and welcome to the review of our Indian Challenger, so the 2020 Challenger, and this is the actual dark horse version of the Challenger. 24,995 pounds of motorcycle. Yeah, it's a bit of a beast. I mean, the numbers, every number about this bike is big. You know, the volume of the engine, it's a 68cc engine. It weighs about 360 kilograms with rider, full fuel and a pillion. You're going to be getting on for probably 500, and it is big. This thing is big, but it is also rather good. So let's have a little bit more of an in-depth dive into it. So this is the new PowerPlus engine. You may remember a couple of weeks ago I was riding the Indian Springfield Dark Horse. That's not the same unit. This is all water cooled. It's a much more sophisticated unit, and it is pumping out 178 newton meters and 122 bhp, which is pretty powerful for a very big V-twin. If you look at some of the other competition in the American cruiser market, they're not quite as powerful. They're always up there on torque. That's really easy to do with a big bulky American V-twin, but the Indian has got the power to back it up as well. It is a very refined V-twin, and actually no, I'm going to change that. It's probably the most refined V-twin that I've ever ridden in a big American cruiser such as this. It is so sublimely smooth, and I mean, I've ridden a lot of the big American cruisery naked sort of stuff. I've got a bit of a soft spot for bikes that really should actually be a little bit too big for me to ride, and this is definitely a step up from anything else I've ever ridden in terms of the level of refinement that the engine offers, in terms of how smooth it is and how it doesn't vibrate around, and also the pickup, the delivery and the fueling are all second to none as far as I'm concerned. It's not, obviously it's not going to be peppy and revvy and peaky and all that sort of stuff. It takes a while for the revs to sort of pick up, but once they do, it's just a pleasure to ride. It's a really, really nice thing. We've got pretty standard suspension. I mean, you can't do anything with the front. I think it's 43mm forks, and we've got an air adjusted rear shock as well. Talking about the chassis on this thing, compared to the Springfield that I was riding last week, one of the big improvements with this bike, when we're talking about the suspension, the brakes, is those Brembo stoppers at the front are absolutely bang on. The last Indian that I rode had got some Indian branded, but I think they were a Japanese, famous Japanese caliper manufacturer, should we say, and they had plenty of power, but not masses of bite, and there wasn't much feel through the lever. These are absolutely really, really, really good, to the point that if you brake in really, really hard, you can actually smell the brakes getting hot, which is not something I've really experienced on many bikes before. So this has got a full suite of electronics with it, the sort of stuff that you'd see on one of the big high power, high capacity, high price nakeds or sports bikes. So you've got lean sensitive traction control, and you've got lean sensitive ABS, and I've got to say the ABS on this thing is excellent. It's not the smoothest ABS when it cuts in, but you can really feel it working away in the background when you are hammering it along on this thing. It's quite impressive because it's got a lot of mass to sort out, and if something does go wrong, it's going to need to intervene quickly. It's going to need to scoop you up, and it's going to need to get you pointing back the right way, and I've always had full confidence in the braking system of the bike. Like I said, it's got traction control as well. That means it's also got riding mode, so you've got rain, road and sport. Sport is where you're going to be spending your time most of the time that you're riding it. Let's have a little look how to change the riding modes. So here we are. I wanted to show you the infotainment system. Yes, it's a big dash touchscreen, fully touchscreen, sat nav, music, phone, bike stats and so on and so on that you can scroll through. You've got the obligatory safety warning. So this is kind of the main sort of setting of the bike. This is just all your bike details, fuel, range, which way you're pointing as well, which is handy if your internal compass like mine is a bit shit. You can reset all the trips on here, and what else you can do is you can customize this screen by dragging in all of these widgets here. You can just pull those onto your main screen, so you've got everything that you want on there, sort of thing, which is quite cool. So you can just take that and put it on the main screen. We also have Riding modes: rain, standard, sport. Obviously soft throttle map, plenty of traction control. Standard is just normal sort of touring and cruising, and sport gives you a more aggressive throttle map. So it is a lot more aggressive, but it's not uncomfortably so, like it is on some bikes. Traction control switchable there as well, so you can turn all of that on and off. And you've also got notifications, which I'm assuming is for things like service interval and so on and so forth. Another cool feature of this bike, we have an electrically adjustable screen, and it may be short, but this fairing is quite tall, so it does actually work really well. So on its lowest setting, your head's in the bubble, pop that up onto its highest setting and you're cocooned in a nice little bubble of calmness. And there's this little sort of vent here just to allow a little bit of air through if you do so need it. Other features we've got some of the music controls and menus you can control through the left hand switch cube. We have got cruise control on the right hand switch cube, which is all very nice and easy to use. And yeah, so that is the big old Indian's infotainment system. While I'm talking about that, I just want to also talk about the riding modes, because the other Indians that I've ridden, they've had the riding modes as well, and when you go up into the top riding mode, sport mode, the throttle connection can come across as being a little bit abrupt. This is at its best in sport mode. It is unbelievably good. You don't get any of that ham-fisted throttle that you can get with big V-twins when you open it and then you have to shut it because you've asked for too much. It's really, actually, I don't know how I'm going to use this word when I'm reviewing this bike, but it's really precise. And yeah, so sport mode on this is greatly improved over the other Indians that I've ridden. So as you can also see, this bike is set up with a very easy to use touchscreen. Americans will call it an infotainment system. It is a touchscreen dash, and it is bloody good. It works pretty well with gloves on. Haven't tried it with winter gloves, but leather gloves seem to be all right. And you can literally do everything that you need to be able to do through the dash. You can cycle through your calls, play your MP3s, music, sat-nav, all of that jazz is all accessible through the touchscreen, which is great. So along with the touchscreen dash, you've also got the compatibility with Apple CarPlay. It will also use the Android system as well, and you've got an AV lead, so you can just plug your phone directly into it if you don't want to do all of that jazz. But yeah, it's dead easy to use, dead easy to set up. The only thing I will say is if you're using the Apple CarPlay, and this is not Indian, it's Apple, you'll need to have a Bluetooth headset on. Once you've got it connected with the Bluetooth headset, you can just turn the Bluetooth headset off and the system will still work. So we've got a feet forward cruiser, we've got swept back handlebars, and we've got a massive seat. What this bike is made for is covering big distances. You haven't seen me doing any big distances on it, but I did some trips up and down the M69 just to gauge the comfort, and you really don't have to go far on this to realise that it's actually going to be a really very comfortable bike to sit on. I would imagine that you could ride this thing for 4, 5, 6 hours in a day and you would have absolutely no trouble. So as I was just talking about comfort, if you're going to be on this bike long periods of time, you're going to be able to do it without stopping for fuel very often. It's got a 22 litre tank, just under 20, I think 22 point something, there or thereabouts. And because the way that you ride it, you kind of just chill out. You're a bit more zen, take it easy, take it all in and enjoy the ride. And because the way you ride it, you are going to be able to go long distances. You've got 200 miles plus locked in that tank, if you're sitting at around 65 or 70 miles an hour. So another surprising aspect of this bike that I want to touch on is the handling of it, because you look at it, it's long, it's big, it's heavy, and it is not looking like it's going to be able to handle a twisty. All right, look, I'm not going to tell you that this thing dives into corners and it's wicked when you hold it on a line and all of that bullshit, because it's a cruiser, it's meant for cruising. But you can hustle on it, it's good fun. You turn the traction control and it's got the same penchant for getting its back end out as the Springfield did, which is all very good fun and I enjoy that a lot. But when you start riding it like that, it's a bit like watching John Candy do breakdancing. It's funny to start with and then it just looks a bit awkward, so you end up just slowing down, and it just kind of changes your mentality on how you attack a ride and how you go about a ride, and just makes you feel a lot more chilled out. It's opened my eyes to a different kind of motorcycling that isn't riding around like your hair's on fire. So what do we like about the Indian Challenger Dark Horse? I love the colour scheme. I think the decals are a little bit big, the ones on the side of the tank. maybe an option to tone those down a little bit would be good, but you know what, it is what it is. So yeah, I think the colour scheme looks brilliant. The comfort is phenomenal, and the refinement and the all of the things that go together to make that engine so good in terms of the mechanical build of it, the things like cylinder deactivation and the electronic throttle and the riding modes, the lean sensitive traction control, all just work brilliantly, and it's a real eye-opener. What don't we like? I don't know, it's too big for my garage. Here's one actually, and this is the truth. I live in quite a small house, normal terrace house, with a drive down the side of it. The drive goes downhill towards my garden, and I am driving in and then I have to reverse it out, which obviously paddling it up any sort of incline when it's this big is a real problem for somebody my size. It would make it a lot more accessible if they could work out some way to stick a reverse gear on the starter motor so you could just sort of paddle it backwards on the starter motor. It would mean that I could use this a lot more, because as it is, the short little 20-minute trips out, I don't go on this because it takes me 15 minutes to paddle the thing back up the 30 meters to the top of my drive. Yes, I'm a short ass, but for people like me, it would make these bikes so much more attractive if they could fit a little reverse gear. Oh, and the other thing that we had a slight problem with on this test was that the mirrors are a little bit vibey when you're pushing on the motorway, sort of 75, 85, something like that. They do get a bit vibey, but if you stick it at about 65 to 70, not an issue at all. So there we have it, Indian's new Challenger. It's big, it's brash, it's bold, and it's actually really rather good. It's not going to appeal to a lot of people on our page, and I know that, because there are some people that look at bikes like this and they just think they're shit from the word go. I'm a bit more open-minded, and like I said, I've got a soft spot for big, oversized, overweight, overpowered and over-cc'd bikes. Is there a place for it in my life? No. I can see a time in my life, as I'm getting older and older, I'm kind of leaning to bikes like this more and more and more, and I can see a time when, yes, I will be absolutely itching to get one of these parked in my garage. But just for where I am at the minute, I've loved having it for the 2 weeks that Indian have lent it to me, and I am going to be a little bit gutted to see it go, because it just turns heads, and where else can you ride around listening to 1980s hip-hop full blast through a stereo on something that looks this cool? Not very many places. Anyway, I've been Toad, you've been watching Visordown.com, and if you've liked this review, please don't forget to hit like, subscribe and the notification bell. Cheers folks.